Welcome to my channel. What? Wait. Clear your mind for just a second and really focus in. Today we are stepping way back into the deep, ancient past. We are traveling back 66 million years to become historical observers of the most terrifying, world-shattering 24 hours in the history of our entire planet. In this explainer, we're looking at the last day of the dinosaurs. There's a quote that says, "One of the greatest illusions in life is continuity." Now let that sink in for a moment. This single philosophical thought is really the anchor for our whole journey today. We wake up every single morning expecting the world to be exactly as we left it when we closed our eyes. And for millions of years, the world's most magnificent creatures believed the exact same thing. Until that illusion shattered. So let's start by looking at exactly how this deception began and unpack this illusion of stability. For 16 million years, the dinosaurs had experienced absolute, uninterrupted paradise. The world was warm, it was lush, and it was completely covered in sprawling forests. Giant titanosaurs grazed peacefully, while the famous T-Rex ruled the top of the food chain. But I want you to imagine for a second that you aren't one of these giants. Imagine you're one of our distant ancestors, a tiny, furry little mammal, barely bigger than a mouse, hiding deep in the ferns. From your very vulnerable perspective down on the forest floor, the ground constantly trembles with the footsteps of these invincible giants. It felt like this reality would just go on forever. But the end begins not with a massive bang, but with a whisper, just a tiny dot in the sky. If you were looking up from the undergrowth, you might have noticed a new, slightly strange star. And for weeks, it slowly grew bigger and brighter. But the giant beasts all around you, they completely ignored it. They just went about their business, hunting, eating, sleeping, upholding this illusion of continuity right up until the very last few hours, when that tiny dot grew to the size of a small moon. And that brings us to the exact moment the sky literally fell, violently rupturing this long-standing peace. Consider the exact mechanism of this destruction. We're talking about an asteroid larger than Mount Everest, heading straight for the shallow waters of the Yucatan Peninsula. As it enters our atmosphere, it is traveling at almost 60 times the speed of sound. 60! It takes just 2 seconds for it to pass through the thin atmospheric layer between space and the ground. And right here, at this exact fraction of a second, the world is one way, and it is about to be fundamentally, permanently different. The sheer speed of this chaos is honestly hard to comprehend. 0 seconds, the asteroid makes contact. In a fraction of a single second, the energy of billions of nuclear weapons is released. The Everest-sized rock completely vaporizes. A blinding flash of light illuminates the sky as the bedrock beneath it instantly melts into searing hot plasma at tens of thousands of degrees. Within just minutes, a mind-bending magnitude 11 earthquake tears across the globe. And by hour 15, unimaginable 100-meter tsunamis are still violently reshaping coastlines on the complete opposite side of the planet. But the impact itself was just the beginning. Let's break down the immediate wrath of the Earth that followed. Because the sheer scale of the physics involved here is absolutely staggering. The energy from the impact pushed so hard against the Earth's crust that the solid rock actually lost all its strength. It flowed away from the impact site exactly like liquid in a puddle when a kid jumps into it. It instantly created a crater 25 kilometers deep, and as that liquid crust bounced back up, it briefly formed a temporary mountain stretching 10 kilometers high into the atmosphere. Just unbelievable! The macro-scale devastation is almost unthinkable. That magnitude 11 earthquake I mentioned, the strongest ever witnessed in billions of years, shatters the bedrock. Over in India, the seismic shock triggers volcanic eruptions that will violently erupt for the next 30,000 years. And the displaced ocean crashes back in, creating a ring of tsunamis up to 1 kilometer high. That is tall enough to swallow literally any skyscraper humanity would ever build. But contrast all that massive global destruction with the micro-scale panic of our tiny mammalian ancestor, desperately scrambling for absolutely any crack in the trembling earth to hide from the deafening roar of a dying world. As terrifying as the ground was, the true global horror wasn't beneath their feet. It was looking up into a sky that had become a hell of fire and ash. Let's walk through this terrifying planetary mechanism step by step because it's crazy. Step 1, an incredible amount of material, up to 60 times the mass of the asteroid itself, was blasted straight out into space. Step 2, gravity pulls most of that material right back down through the atmosphere. Step 3. As millions of tons of this rocky debris re-enters at hyperspeeds, the friction rapidly heats the atmosphere to the temperature of an industrial oven. And finally, Step 4. This searing dome of heat essentially ignites the entire planet, sparking massive global wildfires. Can you imagine the absolute sensory nightmare of this? The air itself is literally burning. The majestic forests that had stood for millions of years are just spontaneously combusting. For our small, furry ancestor, the surface of the Earth is no longer survivable. Your only chance of living through this horrifying, hellish version of Earth is to scramble deep inside a dark, damp cave, burying yourself away from the searing heat and the raining glass up above. But that blinding heat doesn't last forever. What follows is a long, suffocating silence of darkness and freezing cold. See, as the gigantic plume of vaporized rock, soot from all those global wildfires, and impact aerosols spread across the upper atmosphere, it acts like a giant blacked-out curtain draped over the Earth. The sun is entirely blocked out. The world is plunged into absolute pitch darkness. And without sunlight, the global temperature crashes by as much as 25 degrees Celsius within days. The biting cold sets in, and that formerly warm, vibrant paradise we talked about, it becomes a freezing, desolate wasteland. And the domino effect of that darkness is absolute. Without sunlight, global photosynthesis completely shuts down, resulting in a devastating 90% loss of marine plankton. Because plankton form the very base of the marine food web, the entire ocean ecosystem just collapsed. This entirely doomed the giant marine reptiles and ammonites that had dominated the seas. They simply starved. Up on the surface, fungi thrived on the rotting, burned remains of the world. Ultimately, at least 75% of all species on Earth simply vanished from existence. The mighty dinosaurs who had reigned as kings for eons were completely wiped out. Just like that. Which brings us to the ultimate question: what does this ancient apocalypse mean for us today? Well, it reveals the fragility of our own humanity. Eventually, from the cold, dark ashes of this destroyed world, survivors did emerge. The birds, which are actually the direct descendants of the feathered dinosaurs, took to the skies. And the mammals, those tiny, terrified ancestors of ours who spent weeks hiding and shivering in the dark caves, well, they stepped out into the light. Without that asteroid completely disrupting the dinosaurs' continuity, mammals would never have had the opportunity to rise. When you think about it, we inherited the Earth entirely by accident. Consider this staggering comparison for a second. The dinosaurs enjoyed 165 million years of stability. Modern humans? We have been around for barely 0.1% of that time. It's a microscopic, incredibly fragile sliver of existence. Now yes, in our incredibly brief moment, we have achieved wonders. We've split the atom, we've reached space, we've basically made the world our own. But our long-term survival? It is absolutely not a given. The dinosaurs didn't know the sky could fall. They didn't know their continuity was just an illusion. But we do. We know exactly how fragile our existence really is, even when the world outside our window looks perfectly stable and calm. We have the unique power to look up at the stars, recognize our vulnerability, and actually prepare for the unexpected. So I want to leave you with this final haunting question to consider today. Our continuity is fragile, so how will we protect it? Goodbye. See you in the next video.